Well, right. The argument doesn't prove this cause to be omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, good, creative of design, or listening to prayers, reading innermost thoughts, or forgiving sins. But so what? The argument doesn't try to prove such thing. It would be a bizarre form of atheism, indeed not worth the name, which believed that there exists an uncaused, beginningless, spaceless, timeless, immaterial, unimaginably powerful, personal creator of the universe, who may, for all we know, also have the properties mentioned by you. Well, we don't need to call this personal creator God, if you find that unhelpful or misleading. But nevertheless, the point remains that a being such as I just described must exist. And you've said nothing to show the contrary. Well, sure, we can go on to the second argument. Here's a simple moral argument for God's existence. Number one, if God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. Two, objective moral values and duties do exist. Three, therefore, God exists. Now, what makes this little argument so powerful is that most people believe in both of the premises. They just never put two and two together to draw the logically necessary inference. In fact, Professor Dawkins, you yourself seem to be committed to the truth of both premises. With respect to premise one, you've elsewhere written, and I quote, "There is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. We are machines for propagating DNA. It is every living object's sole reason for being." So, you agree with premise one. Right. Okay, what about premise two? Now, although you say that there is no good, no evil, nothing but pitiless indifference, you, Dr. Dawkins, are a stubborn moralist. Haven't you, for example, vigorously condemned as morally wrong and reprehensible the abuse and harassment of homosexuals? Right. And how about the religious indoctrination of children? Right, tantamount to child abuse. And how about the Incan practice of human sacrifice? Right, abominable. And how about God's commanding the slaughter of the Canaanites? Right, such an immoral deity. In fact, haven't you even offered your own revised version of the Ten Commandments for guiding moral behavior? That's what I thought. So, since you affirm both premises of the moral argument, you are, on pain of irrationality, also committed to the truth of the argument's conclusion that God exists. Can you explain this inconsistency? No? Well, then let's go on to the teleological argument, or the argument for design. As you know, the cutting edge of the current argument for design concerns the remarkable fine-tuning of the universe for the existence of intelligent, interactive life. Here's a simple formulation of the teleological argument based on the fine-tuning of the universe. Premise one, the fine-tuning of the universe is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. Two, it is not due to physical necessity or chance. Three, therefore, it is due to design. Now, with respect to premise one, perhaps I'd better explain to our audience what is meant by fine-tuning. This expression does not mean designed. Otherwise, the argument would be obviously circular, claiming that the best explanation of design is design. Rather, during the last 50 years or so, scientists had discovered that the existence of intelligent, interactive life anywhere in the cosmos depends upon a delicate and complex balance of initial conditions simply given in the Big Bang itself. If nature's fundamental constants and quantities were to be altered by less than a hair's breadth, this life-permitting balance would be destroyed, and no living, interactive organisms of any kind could exist anywhere in the cosmos. Now, you recognize the fact of fine-tuning, don't you? Yes, Sir Martin Rees has done a very good job of describing this remarkable fine-tuning of the universe. Good. Now, premise one simply lists the three possibilities for explaining the presence of this amazing fine-tuning: physical necessity, chance, or design. Are you aware of any other explanations? Good. Then these are our three alternatives. And the question then is, which is the best explanation? Well, premise two addresses that question. The first alternative, physical necessity, is extraordinarily implausible because the values of the constants and quantities are independent of the laws of nature. The laws of nature are consistent with a wide range of values for these constants and quantities. Right, Sir Martin Rees does reject this first alternative. And you agree with him about that. Good, we're making progress. You know, it's so nice to be talking with you about these things, Professor Dawkins. So what about the second alternative, that the fine-tuning of the universe is due to chance? Well, it seems to me that the problem with this alternative is that the odds against the universe's being life-permitting are so incomprehensibly great that they cannot be reasonably faced. So, to increase the chances of fine-tuning, you're prepared to postulate an infinite number of randomly ordered, unseen universes, composing a sort of world ensemble or multiverse of which our universe is but a part. Right. And somewhere in this infinite world ensemble, finely tuned universes will appear simply by chance alone, and we happen to be one such world. Yes, it does appear to be, how did you put it, an unparsimonious extravagance. So how do you respond to that objection? Now, let me get this straight. You say that if each one of these universes is simple in its fundamental laws, then we are still not postulating anything highly improbable. Well, now, Dr. Dawkins, that response just seems to me to be confused. In the first place, each universe in the ensemble is not simple, but it's characterized by an array of contingent quantities and constants. If each universe in the ensemble were simple, then why did you feel the need to postulate the world ensemble in the first place? Secondly, you're assuming that the simplicity of the whole is a function of the simplicity of the parts. And that's just an obvious mistake. Think, for example, of a complex mosaic, say a mosaic of a Roman face. A complex mosaic is made up of a great number of individually simple parts, little chips of blue and green and brown, for example. The parts are simple, but the whole is complex. And in exactly the same way, an ensemble of simple universes will still be complex if those universes are randomly ordered in their constants and quantities, rather than, say, all having the same values. Look, here's what I think you need to say. You can argue that the postulate of a world ensemble is still simple if there is a single, simple mechanism generating the many worlds. So the question is, what mechanisms do you suggest for generating this infinite, randomly ordered world ensemble? An oscillating model of the universe. So the idea here is that the universe has undergone an infinite series of expansions and contractions, and that each time it expands, it gets a new array of constants and quantities until finally a finely tuned universe emerges by chance alone. Right. Well, let me just ask you this. Are you familiar, Dr. Dawkins, with the many difficulties facing oscillatory models of the universe which have caused contemporary cosmologists to be skeptical of them? Well, all right, never mind. You can find the references in my book, Reasonable Faith. Here's the fundamental point, however. Even if the universe could oscillate from eternity past, such a universe would require an infinitely precise fine-tuning of its initial conditions in order to persist through an infinite series of cycles. So the mechanism you're proposing is not simple. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. It is fine-tuning of an infinitely precise variety. Moreover, such a universe involves a fine-tuning of a very bizarre sort because the initial conditions have to be set at minus infinity in the past. But how can that be done if there never was a beginning? Oh, okay, you've got other possible mechanisms. Okay, what's that? Oh my goodness, Lee Smolin's evolutionary cosmology. All right, let me explain to our audience that according to this conjecture, black holes are portals to baby universes being birthed by ours. Universes which produce lots of black holes will therefore produce lots of offspring and therefore have an evolutionary advantage over time. Now, since black holes are the result of star formation, and stars favor planets where life can evolve, the unintended effect of evolutionary cosmology is to make life-permitting universes more probable. Well, Dr. Dawkins, there are numerous problems with Lee Smolin's evolutionary cosmology, but the fatal assumption in the theory was his assumption that universes which produce lots of black holes also produce lots of stable stars. In fact, it turns out that the exact opposite is true. The most proficient producers of black holes will be universes which form primordial black holes prior to star formation, so that life-permitting universes would actually be weeded out by Lee Smolin's evolutionary cosmology. So it turns out that Smolin's scenario would actually make the existence of a life-permitting universe even more improbable. Do you have anything else to suggest? No. Well, neither of the ones that you've suggested is even tenable, much less simple. So I guess you haven't shown that your postulation of a randomly ordered world ensemble isn't an unparsimonious extravagance. But are you aware, Professor Dawkins, that there are even worse problems with the world ensemble hypothesis?